Right. Well, this is being recorded, so those that missed some of it, they can tune in tomorrow when I get this marked up and sent out to them. But we'll get going to not occupy your evening. I know that we got a lot of Mets fans that are on this call, and some of them want to tune into that game. So, thank you for showing up. A little after 7. The first thing I want to do, I know we've had some people in some of the affected areas of the East Coast, down in the North Carolina area and down in Florida. Obviously, thoughts are out to those, and hope everybody is safe and well. I reached out to those that we had in those areas, and it seems as though everybody is doing well and unscathed relatively. But obviously, that's trauma that we can't express. We do have bond response people that are actually down in the North Carolina, Western North Carolina area, helping out with Jim Mahar and that group. But don't want to avoid recognizing that. Also, within the group, we have our new athletic director, vice president at the university. Bob Beretta's on the call as well. The one thing, Bob will have the ability to take questions as Mark and Woj will. I ask that questions be held towards the end, after we're done with the program. We'll have a Q&A session, and you'll have your opportunities to fire some questions to these guys at your leisure. But obviously, we've had some exciting times here at St. Bonaventure. Finally, we've had somebody upstage Mark in personality and fame. That you might know him. He might be familiar to you, a fellow six man. Adrian Wojnarowski came on board as our general manager for men's basketball. That might have caught a little bit of press. We don't want to belabor you with the press releases and the numerous content that came out on it, but want to give you an opportunity to hear from the first ever general manager of St. Bonaventure basketball here at St. Bonaventure, and let him kind of walk you through the process. Woj, if you could tell how your passion for Bonaventure turned into an actualization and a job opportunity down here with your background, I'm sure people would be captivated to hear that.
Thanks, Sean. Great to be here with all of you guys. And listen, I'm sure you've heard me talk probably since or read some stuff since the announcement of my return back to Bonaventure. But just very quickly, it started with a phone call. Well, I would say it started with a lot of conversations among Coach Schmidt and Bob Beretta, over the last year about a GM position, and with NIL and with the portal, schools in our conference and outside of our conference were adding that position. And it's something ultimately that could take some things off the plate of our coaching staff during the season, and put a focus on raising NIL and also, managing all the relationships that go into recruiting now. It's not just recruiting a high school or recruiting a junior college, recruiting internationally. You have to be prepared for the portal. Half the country, half the players are going to be in it every year. And so is there someone we could find to do that? And I kept thinking about different names and different people. And I kept coming back myself to, I would really love to do that job, take away everything else. I would love to do that job. And I had been working with Coach and Bob and our coaching staff in different ways through the years, in raising NIL and recruiting, just some relationships that I were helpful probably to us over time. And so June night, I'm at the Brooklyn Marriott. I'm getting ready for the draft. I had just broken a couple stories, and I was sitting there in the lobby, and I just called Bob and said, "Hey, what do you think about me maybe for this GM job?" And he was like, "Well, in addition to ESPN?" I said, "No, I would leave ESPN." And it started a conversation, and I said, I'm very confident, I'm very serious about it. And I said, run it by Coach. I'm pretty buried here the next few days. Run it by Coach Schmidt, see what he thinks, and then let's talk some more about it. And we did, and the three of us started talking, and it led us to a decision that was not very hard for me. I was ready to, proud of the career I had with ESPN and elsewhere, but just felt very drawn to the program and to the school, just like all of you are. And I don't think that I'm much different from anybody who's on this call about the passion you have for the place and the program. And I just saw it as an opportunity to help Coach Schmidt find there's some areas where again, focusing on NIL, focusing on some relationships that I have around the world of basketball that I thought could help open up some more doors in recruiting and again raising money. And we're talking with a bunch of new marketing deals that will go through to the collective and get toward our players. We'll start announcing some of those soon as we get them finished up. um, I know the second part of this, and Sean had asked me what it's been like so far, and I'll tell you what's been most remarkable so far was something I thought I already knew, but you see it differently when you're around a lot more. And that's the job that our coaching staff does on a day in and day out basis. Being able to be in practice a lot now and watching coach work in a way that I showed up for the games like you guys did, or we would talk, but to see where it goes from the individual workouts in the fall to the team start. I showed up at the start of team practice, and then you start to see the growth in the group and you see the way he's teaching. And I've been around some great teachers in the game, coaches at all levels, and you know, to see coach at work and his staff at work with that, and then in recruiting, and I'm learning so much about how you talk to recruits, you know, going out on the road with, you know, Sean Neal for a few days, and just watching how he talks to players. So I'm learning every day with it. And so I knew this was a hard job. I know that competing at the level that Mark has kept our program at takes incredible skill and will and genius. There's a lot incorporated into winning at the level that we've won at, and just being around it day in and day out, it just makes you want to go out there, work harder for them. And when I'm talking to potential players and agents of players, because they all have, many of them have agents now, especially internationally. Um, you just feel so much. It's so easy to sell what the opportunity players have to come play for coach and play in our environment. So I would just say those are some of my early um, views of this. And real quick, I'm spending a lot of my time on, and we're going to talk about this later in the Zoom, and I have a gentleman who's going to jump on for a few minutes with us um, in the NIL space with trucking logistics. And that's what I wanted to get with some of the group here tonight. And then credit card processing, how you guys may have the ability to make some referrals to us. And I'll explain a little more later how that works. But it's going to be the lifeblood of our NIL program and of our ability to, and Bob can speak to this, you know, there's going to probably, there almost assuredly are going to be minimum floors that you need to meet in these areas to be able to be in the Atlantic 10 and play at our level. And there's minimum floors we have to be able to give coach a chance to win. And I am more confident than ever after a few weeks. We aren't going to just hit minimums. I think we have a chance to compete at a really high level in NIL, but we need everybody's help. We don't necessarily need donations and writing checks, but the business community can really help us in a way that also helps their businesses. And we'll get to some of that later on.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, obviously the energy down here is unbelievable. Uh, Sooner or later, I hope you aren't hearing his voice in your sleep yet, Woj, because once Mark gets going and the season is his, everybody in the Riley Center is slamming their doors and buttoning things up. So we don't have to listen to that. Sooner or later, you'll get to that. But Mark, we want to give you some fair time as well, and talk about the team to this point, how things have been going with practice, what you have between now and the start of the season, and give the boys a little teaser.
You want me to talk now after all that abuse?
Absolutely.
I appreciate you guys coming on. And Woj is fantastic. Woj is going to do, and we can talk about it later, but Woj is going to do a terrific job for what we need, not just in raising money for the collective, but you know, for all his relationships. As I said in the press conference, his press conference, you know, I could work another 50 years and never have the relationships that Woj has built. And in this whole portal thing now, relationships are everything. And Woj knows, I think every agent in this world. And that's how you recruit. That's the big thing now. Is not knowing the high school coach or the AAU coach. Now it's knowing the agents. And having Woj with us is just a great get for us, and we're thrilled. In terms of the team, as you guys know, we have 10 new guys. It's a process. You're reteaching everything. It's almost like having a team every year and just trying to teach them the basics again, and trying to teach them our philosophy. How we try to do things. The locker room, doing things the right way. I'm a perfectionist when it comes to the basketball part of this thing. Trying to build the culture again. And the difficult thing is usually when you have a really good team or a really good program, those veteran guys teach the young guys how to do it in all aspects, going to class, behaving out in the clubs in Allegheny, coming to practice, the joy that they have, the work ethic that they have. Usually you take the veteran guys and you show the young guys, all right, this is how a play is run. We don't have that any longer. So the process is a little bit slower in putting things in. But I think we have last year, and I think I might have said this in the last Zoom that we had, last year I thought we weren't athletic enough. I thought we weren't long enough, especially on the wings. And we got hurt on the backboard a lot. We weren't getting in the passing lanes as much. We weren't getting as many deflections. We weren't getting a lot of offense off of our defense. And so one of the things that we tried to do this year in the portal was try to get more athletic, longer guys. And I think we've done that. Hopefully that will carry over to to the play, and us being a little bit more athletic and playing a little bit faster. But just like every team, guys, like some guys catch on very quickly. And most of the guys, it's a little bit slower. And then there's always one or two guys that have a really hard time retaining stuff. And those guys are usually the guys that won't play a lot, especially early on. But I think the practices have been going well. Some days are better than others. But there's not really one guy that stands out. I think we have a bunch of guys that are learning the system, that are getting better every day. And we have our closed scrimmage, our secret scrimmage, I guess, as they call it, next Saturday against Kent State at Kent State. And we've been doing this for, I think with Kent, probably 7 or 8 years. And it's been really good. So we'll get a really good idea of where we're at come next Saturday.
Thanks, Mark. Obviously, with Woj's addition here, it's given us a platform to kind of capitalize on something, and obviously our Bonnet fans, and this group especially, has been extremely supportive and philanthropic with their sponsorship and support of the program. And Bonaventure's proven as one of the smallest Division I properties in the country that they can duke it out with the best. And passion is important, but activation is a must. And you guys have followed with both. This group has been extremely supportive with their passion and their activation. And that's what we're that's what we're asking for in the future is to get us connections to additional creative means. And those creative means are some of the things that Woj is directly going to reference to. Creative means for us to fight in this new landscape of what goes on. And so we're going to give Woj a good amount of time here to kind of expand on that and show how we can all help and getting the word and possible support to those that need. Because obviously it's been well documented that we're one of the smallest Division I properties, as I said, with 35 living alumni, and we need all our Bonnies on board to make this happen. Go right ahead, Woj. You're muted.
There we go. Sean's exactly right. And the support of this group has been, paramount in our ability to, as you know, charter flights and pay guarantee games at home, and hopefully maybe some more training table stuff this season. And we want to create a family lounge for our players' families in the Riley Center, just an area for them during games when they come, where they can come in for refreshments pregame and halftime. Just make the environment just make it a little bit better for them when they come watch their sons play. And so those are really important things that we want to be able to provide to the program. But NIL, and listen, we have talked about it. We've done it from the beginning of the collective, where it was simply subscriptions to Team Unfurl, where people pay a monthly subscription or pay an annual number and get some value from the collective with events and gear and that stuff. And that's certainly one element of it. And that got us off the ground, and that allowed us to be competitive for a couple of years as we were trying to all figure out what this landscape would look like. And for us now to take it to another level, but also create something that's more sustainable. That's what I'm hoping to do in this role, is help to create streams that are sustainable, where we're just not coming back to the same and all present company included. We're not just coming back to you guys all the time and saying, guys, we need 6-man, we need NIL. We know you give to the business school, or you're given to the capital campaign for facilities. We can't keep coming to the same group and asking, especially when our group is smaller than some of the others, and where the place where we're changing that, and where I think we're going to ultimately drive most. And my goal is ultimately all of our revenue in NIL, and not just my goal, our goal, two areas. And I'm going to start with one, trucking logistics. There's a company called Victory Logistics. They're out of Pittsburgh. It started as a smaller company in Tennessee that merged as they've grown. It started like this: one college coach who used to be in our conference, his relationship with one of his former walk-ons, who had started a trucking company in West Tennessee. And they started, this was like 19 months ago. It wasn't that long ago. And essentially it started with the guy at the trucking logistics company said, hey, if you can get a few of your boosters, your supporters to in any number of industries, right? Everything from steel, anything you put on a truck, steel, lumber, furniture, cosmetics, refrigerated trucks with vegetables, produce, and we could show you a list. Anything that is moved on a truck, essentially in North America, Canada, US, Mexico. If you can get these businesses to switch over to my company, I'm going to give you back 25% of everything we make off those accounts to your collective. And that started with one coach in this one company. 18, 19, 20 months ago, there are now 125 schools signed up with this company, with this concept. And essentially this trucking logistics company, they got rid of their sales force, or most of it. And the collectives and the schools, but the collectives are their sales force. So we go out and we find trucking where our supporters, boosters, whomever, number one, yeah, it's great if they love Bonaventure and they love Bonaventure basketball, want to support it. But also it's a company that's going to, in 70% of the cases, come in at your current price or come in lower. And the quality has been good. And I vetted them out with a lot of schools, other coaches and people who run collectives who have turned their very important donors and relationships over to this company and had great results. And so we're one of 3 schools in the Atlantic 10 right now that is with this company. It's us, Rhode Island, and Dayton. And schools like Georgia, who, again, this has been around 18, 19 months. Georgia football has got like some big lumber companies in their region who they've signed up. They're doing between $8 and $9 million a year already in NIL. Alabama football has got a flooring company in Boston with a big booster, a big alum in Boston who's setting flooring all over the country. Just an example. doing really well for Alabama, among others. And then at our level, the mid-major level, Samford in Birmingham, they did $2 million in the first year with this concept. There's probably, and I was taking some notes on it today, there's probably out of 125 schools, there's 25 already doing over $1 million a year, many of which much bigger than us, where they just have more to pull from. But there's another, another 25, or there's another 40 to 45 schools that are doing 500,000 to $1 million. And I think that's the area we can get in right away. And so we've signed people up. We're turning them into this company, and we're getting, all kinds of different. I was on 3 different Zooms today with Victory and with potential Bonaventure people who can, who have logistics needs. Some of these people, Coach and I met with one last week, a company around Olean who owns several furniture stores, and they care very much about Bonaventure. There's a lot of Bonaventure grads there, but they don't love the service they have. They don't love, and we've gotten that from another flooring company, another Bonaventure guy who has a flooring company in central New York and a few stores. We're also getting the benefit of they see a need for better service, and this company has shown they can do that. They have been, the guys at Victory have been so enthusiastic about St. Bonaventure. They have been on, the CEO has been on many of the calls with me. The CEO and 2 of his top salespeople are going to come to Olean in November, and they're going to be available for 3 days to meet individually with people. And this is a company doing, again, Georgia and Alabama and Texas and lots of high majors who are probably going to produce more money for them. But they get a real kick out of helping schools like ours compete with those guys. And they actually take great pride in their roster of schools last year, like Grand Canyon, like Samford, who have been involved in trucking, who've been involved in their company. They were all in the NCAA tournament. They had success in raising money, and it helped them put together teams. And they want to help the Bonnies get back to the NCAA tournament and get back to postseason play. So we would ask anybody you can think of, big or small. It can be, we said steel and lumber, and those things are big, but it can be produce. It could be, again, anything that moves on a truck. And that includes, we have one we're in a conversation with between Texas and Monterrey, Mexico. There's one of our former players has, oversees logistics for his company. And they're working on that one particular route that would have 40 or 50 trucks a day. Remember, we get 25% of everything that they build these companies. And so it is significant. And the best part is we're not asking anybody to write a check to us. We're not asking them to, they're going to spend their money on the trucking and on the transportation anyway. And so if there's an opportunity to get quality service and lower prices or comparable prices, and then also help us, and as we get these nailed down, then we find more and more, and then hopefully we have something that's sustainable. And so I'm spending a ton of my time trying to, vet out a lot of different Bonaventure people who are, who we're getting recommended to and we're coming to, and then we're going to certainly do that in our community, not just Bonaventure alums, but people in our local community that we're going to try to get to. And I think this is the pathway for us, and you're seeing it again with schools we're competing against. And the good news for us, we're the only school in New York State. New York State's the 6th biggest trucking market in the country. Syracuse is not involved. St. John's is not involved. And so one of the ideas I had too was, let's say, Mike McDonald, the Damon's a good friend of mine. He was a classmate of mine at Bonaventure. I said to Mike, if you have somebody who you have a relationship with there, and they don't necessarily care anything about Bonaventure, but they want to help you, and Mike's the coach at Damon Division II. Damon's not big enough to get a deal with this company, but if they could bring us in with one of their prospective businesses, we'll share the money with them. And we've told that to our other sports. Coach Raz in baseball, He's got some friends down in Herkimer who, again, may not care about Bonaventure basketball, but they want to help coach. Well, we'll share that revenue with some of that NIL revenue with baseball. And Jay Broadhurst, who obviously Coach McNamee knows, a great swimmer at Bonaventure, who we were on today with him, and he's got just a giant manufacturing consulting business with access to lots of places. He's opening doors up for us, and there's a world where we can help swimming with some of our money. And so there's lots of ways we can do this. And so any of you on the call who you can think of some businesses that we haven't chased down yet, and we're just starting, that would be a huge impact for us. And then we have another one, credit card processing. The gentleman whose company we've joined up with is going to jump on the call here at 7:30 and just talk for a few minutes about getting businesses signed up and switched over with credit card processing. There are a lot more people who would know folks who have businesses who use credit cards than people who need trucking. And so that opens up a bunch of new doors for us. And the enthusiasm that I've gotten from Bonaventure people out there when I've called and reached out about this has been great. And they're trying to figure out ways to work with us. And I think this is our pathway on NIL, because we can keep growing this. Like, there's no doubt in my mind that we can raise the money. We can build off these businesses, that they're going to get good service. And our goal is not to just play in the Atlantic 10, to just have a team in the Atlantic 10. We want to give coach the ability to go out and get the players that allow us to continue to win and compete at the highest level of the Atlantic 10. And I think these are pathways for us to get there. That's my pitch.
And that kind of leads into a mentality that I have towards this. Like, Bonaventure's always been kind of the stepchild, and they always wanted to be the little engine it could, and this gives us the opportunity to be the little engine it is, and through, again, creative means to make this happen, and not be tapping the same pockets that obviously we're so thankful that we have access to. Bob, I don't mean to call you in here, but do you have anything to add towards the dialogue that we've had to this point?
Yeah, I appreciate it. Sean, thanks very much. Coach, thanks. Woj, and everyone for joining us. And certainly our thoughts and prayers are out to those that are affected by the hurricanes in Carolina and down south in Florida and all those areas. I think you can tell by talking to Woj, he signed up for a retirement job. He's just kind of kicking back and relaxing when he can, and having a Burton burger every now and then, and checking in on basketball practice. And he said it in the press conference that this isn't a retirement job. He's going to attack this relentlessly, because that's who Woj is. His competitive nature is off the charts. That's what made him the best in the business on a historical front, not just in his current genre, but ever. And he's bringing that same passion, motivation, and drive to this position. And you can hear we're committed. We're committed to competing at the highest level, and not just being able to be in the game, but to win championships. And to do that, we need to be creative. The landscape is changing before us, and we just need to have some creative thought. And I think these new initiatives that Woj is talking about, we feel really good about, because it's not going to cannibalize any of the other revenue streams that we've been fortunate to tap into. And certainly everyone's generosity has been key to our success in the past, and will be critical moving forward. And the WTE trucking initiative and the credit card, these are just parts of our normal everyday business for some of us that we can just sign up for, and it won't impact us negatively, but it'll drive significant sustainable revenue to help us fuel that NIL space. And if we head down that revenue share path, which it's very likely that we will, that we're going to need to come up with even more funding and be even more creative. And so we're trying to be great stewards of our finances, but we know none of it's possible without the incredible support of folks like all of you on the Six Man Club. And I just really want to thank you for your past support as an alum, and certainly now as the director of athletics here. I have a greater appreciation for the passion from all of you. Thank you for the warm welcome I've had back to campus, and I can't believe I have the opportunity to get to be the AD and work with people the magnitude of Woj and Coach and Sean and Messian here. It's a great group of people that have their sights set on elite performance, and we have some elite people and some elite people on the court, and Coach is going to mold them into champions, and we'll do that with all of your help. So, Sean, other than that, I just want to say thank you to everyone, and can't wait to see you up here for a home game here in the next couple of weeks.
Appreciate it, Bob. Thank you.
Oh.
Go ahead, Wajie.
Yeah, and I want to introduce real quick. I still get them confused on my phone. In fact, there's Bob Barada. There's Bob Barada, our AD, and then there's Bob Barada, who used to be a neighbor of mine in New Jersey. We won't hold it against him. He's a Fordham guy, former Fordham baseball player, an attorney in New York, a baseball agent, represented some pretty high-profile baseball players in his day, and now he's down in Florida. He has got a company that he started called My Camps, and I'm going to let Bob explain it today. But he texted me today, and he said, "Hey, what times do you want me to get on the Zoom?" And I thought it was my athletic director texting me. I'm like, "Oh, it starts at 7." And Bob's like, "You want me on at 7?" I realized it was the other Bob Barada. But Bob has got a business up and running that's serving schools like Arizona State, Penn State, Pitt, Marshall. And we were down in Charlotte at our NIL event with Coach Schmidt and Tim Wynn and Marcus Green. And Bob was in South Carolina meeting the folks at USC there. And he came up and saw the enthusiasm of our fan base at that event, and connected him with John Mickey and Brian Connigan with the collective. And so I'm going to let Bob Barada come in here and just explain a little bit what this model looks like, and then how you guys can maybe help us sift out some potential businesses that this is a fit for. Wait, Bob's muted. Hold on.
You got me? All right. I'm on.
There you are. Okay.
Yeah, I took my Fordham off. I put my son's high school on. I didn't want to completely ruin this. But I mean, I think it's worth noting, and I'm a Fordham guy through and through. Eddie Cole was my guy there, and I was at St. John's, but it was very difficult getting even Fordham alum. And then when I went to that event, I was like, wow, I knew Woj was crazy at basketball games. I seen him at the Barclays Center. But I said, this is crazy. I'm like, this is like a serious alumni group that can execute on things. So that's what has us excited. So our program, which I'm going to get into in a second, but it's worth noting in the beginning, the ones we're having success with, the Marshalls of the world, believe it or not, the 412 Collective, Pitt, they really have alumni that are really investing, not just their money, but their time, their thoughts, their contacts, and all that kind of stuff. So let me give you a brief background, because I think it's important. Woj touched on a little bit about what this whole space is, the payment space, right? And kind of where I come in on it. I've been around it for 20 plus years. My brother was in it. I was in the baseball business for a long time. And then he came to me one day, probably about 15 years ago, and he said, "Hey, why don't we use some of your clients?" Had a couple guys in the Red Sox, one of whom is now the president of baseball operations, ironically enough. And why don't we get those guys some marketing deals by having them show up at a steakhouse, Dustin Pedroia or this guy, and we would get their payment business, and then we'd pay the players a percentage of that. Okay, that's the overlay of like why that makes sense on the pro side. Some extra marketing deals, right? Now introduce this whole NIL into the new way of driving revenue, uniquely driving revenue, right? And now we have, how do we get players to get paid, right? Which I believe they should, and they are. And we can do essentially the same model. We go to businesses that are taking any form of payment. It can be anywhere from a credit card to a Bitcoin, for all you Bitcoin lovers. But it's the payment industry. It's the payment processing industry. People say credit cards, which is fine, but it's truly the payment processing industry. Even like unfurl right now, right? So when someone makes a donation unfurl and they actually pay your fee, Woj, of 3.5%. That's someone's taking on that process of getting you the funds of that donation. Okay. Let's take this now to how are we doing it with collectives now? We're essentially going to them saying, hey, you get them into our program. We will improve their pricing and give 20% of the revenue that's made on the account on a recurring basis to the collective. Now, it doesn't sound like a lot. It wouldn't maybe necessarily sound like a lot in the beginning, but it's the classic business of if you acquire more than you attrit, it is the stickiest revenue of all time because it can just continues to come in. So hypothetically, we had one that just rolled out a few months back. We just got their numbers recently, and they're doing about, and they just started this. They're doing about $6,000 to $7,000 a month. It's their take, the collectives, meaning like money going into the collective. So I'm like, okay, so it's going to be about $100,000 a year of like found money rolling in, on which every year you can say, all right, so we did 100,000 the first year. We're like, well, if we do 100,000, why couldn't we do 200,000? And it's not a one-off. It just continues to, you continue to add upon it as you get more and more businesses into it, right? So I was at a conference in Hollywood, Florida yesterday, and some lady's been in this business. She's 73 years old. I said, how you doing? She's like, oh, I got to sell my book of business. I said, why? She's like, I'm doing $800,000 a month of like passive revenue. I mean, lady's been in it for a long time. And I'm like looking at her going, that's a pretty awesome business you got there, right? And it's passive, right? So to me, it's a no-brainer. But I said this to Woj, and he knows it because he executes on things. The collectives having a success on it are the ones that have people engaged, that care, and are going to make those phone calls and make sure that they get someone to hear us out and get us into the program. That's really what it's all about. We just got Penn State like 7 or 8 months ago, and they're not doing anything. So I'm like, oh, it sounds great. You got Penn State. I'm like, yeah, but their Nittany Lions is not doing anything. Compare that to Louisville, very active, right? Or like a Marshall. And I certainly believe you guys can be, certainly with Woj's contacts and your great alumni base of highly successful guys. Ironically enough, running into Mark Murphy last year down in Naples, sitting next to me at a Mexican restaurant. Pretty funny. I didn't even know the guy. We just started talking, but like the people that are just that are dialed in, and sometimes you don't even realize some of the contacts that you may have, and say, wow, if I just made this one phone call and turn the switch on here, it could be, who knows, it could be a huge deal. The one mistake I mentioned this to Woj earlier today, we don't want to make is, and you get this a lot, you may think someone it's a big business. Say it's like Walmart, right? But the reality is Walmart is so massive that their pricing is so good on this side that there's very little to no margin, right? So, but on the flip side of that, there are accounts that, I have a dealership group out of New York City, and you wouldn't think that they were that great, but they're pulling in, anywhere from $15,000 to $20,000 a month. And it's a dealership that probably most people have never even heard of. That's one element. The other side of this, which is worth noting, I know you're seeing it up in Olean, you're seeing it everywhere, is the notion of a customer now paying what I call the VIG, the fee. You go to a bagel shop. Oh, if you use a credit card, you'd be paying the 3% or 4%. They kind of add it on. As unpleasant as it is for customers nowadays, it's actually a huge profit margin because now the margin just went up enormously, right? So, and when you get those businesses, which by the way, Unfurl being one of them, Woj, where you get passing on the 3.5%, that's the built-in. That fee is built in when you go to execute a payment, right, on your website. That's where the big money nowadays is being made, and you're really seeing this in a lot of restaurants. You're seeing a lot of auto dealerships. You're seeing it at casinos that we have, and that is the new frontier in the payment space, and we're really capitalizing on it. So, well, if you don't mind, if you think it's worth it, I'm going to pull up a couple slides and show them.
Sure.
And some other people. Just give me 1 second. Hey, whoa, just tell me only the host can share slides.
Oh,
Is that,
Well,
or is the way
that's
to
all right.
allow
And
it?
like, well, let me do this. Let me do this, Bob. Let me open it up. Does anybody, we still have, we want to make sure we get to all the basketball business. We want to make sure
Yeah.
you guys are just aware of what we're doing. Uh, as a group, Bob, how best do we mobilize? What kind of businesses should we be looking for? We have some, we have some one sheets and some things that can explain it. But how do we, you said that this is our 6-man club. These are our most
Yep.
fervent supporters. Our collective is, there's some folks in here who are a big part of our collective too. But how do we as a group mobilize in your experience with other schools you're doing business with? How are we best successful?
Well, the first part, your first question, any business, because any, it's revenue, right? So that to me I wouldn't limit yourself as to what kind of business, but you have to ask yourself it's not necessarily customer based business. It could be B2B type stuff. Anyone that takes a payment, any business is fair game on this, and we can get involved and solve for them. The really the best, the most effective way is some of the samples I sent you, those which gives you an explanation, step by step, and a landing page. So with the technology, I mean, I showed a couple guys even this morning. I just literally sent the guy a text, and the guy says, "Oh, great, thank you very much. Like, this is all I need to do is send this out to." It's a simple link, and within that link, landing page for, in this scenario, Unfurl, that landing page, which is run through our website, has your logo, which we'll have all that out in the next day or so. And then it explains it. And then within that website, they can load any kind of information that they want us to have to evaluate that particular business's pricing, right? So then see if we can help them. And then I can then tell you guys, whether or not it's worth it. And I'm sure it will be. So, I mean, really, that's the way to do it. I mean, you can do emails, but really I think to avoid the donor fatigue that we talk about, it's really is to help them. It's like the Jerry Maguire, help me, help you. It's like, help me, help you. Like, here, give me the link and let me get this information out to, I mean, we live in the information age, right? So ignorance is a choice, really. So it's like, here's the information. So when you can disperse that to, I don't know, 100 friends or family, be like, hey, we're really trying to help the Bonnies out here. What do you think of this? And they can read that just simple one-sheeter. That gives that one-sheeter, that website gives them the click ability to go in and do what they need to do. Meaning, contact us, send an email, and then all of a sudden we have a salesperson and you guys get copied on the email. It flows really, really nice. What hasn't worked, what I've seen a lot of this is, let's talk to, it's just a lot of BS, right? Let's get this one to talk to this one. And I'm like, you'll be 3 months out, like a Penn State. I'm like, yeah, that's great. Like this is like, the time to strike on this is now. Like, the iron is hot right now, and to just really get ahead of it. And that's my take on it. Obviously, I'm excited about it because I know it works when the right people are involved.
Yeah, and so Bob is going to come through. We talked earlier today. He was planning, because he was going to be in upstate New York. Maybe come through for our opener against Northridge, and be around for maybe 24, 48 hours, where potentially he can meet with some potential businesses. And so it gives me some time and us some time to maybe get some folks in front of him while he's in town. And our trucking, the logistics company, they're planning to come up in November for 2 or 3 days and meet with companies directly. So it's huge to have them coming up and being able to help answer questions. And obviously they're always available to get on Zoom. So, Bob, thanks for jumping in here with us.
You got it.
And we'll share that.
Hey, Woj, I have a quick question.
Yeah.
Hey, this is Fuzz. One of the questions, these sound like great. Can you guys put together like almost a 1 or 2 page fact sheet, a little bit like on transportation? Hey, we're looking at a trucking company. They charge by the mile. They're doing full truckloads. Here's what they tend to charge. Just so when we go in to talk to people, we're coming at it from a base of knowledge. Like,
yes,
I'm with StockX and we do tons of, 100 million transactions a year. I will go talk to our finance guys, but I need to know like who the competitors are, what the rates are, because we're putting some equity into this, personal equity that we want to make sure we
Yeah.
a point of knowledge.
So
Great.
we have one sheets with both companies. Now, specific pricing, the way we've been doing is we'll get you on a Zoom, we'll get you on a call with Victory, and their process is when people ask for bids on certain routes or certain, they have their policy at that company is to have an answer for somebody in 30 minutes. And so they're holding their staff to that to make sure they get answers right away. But I can connect you with those guys, Fuzz, and get get you on a Zoom for where you can ask them those questions for 15, 20 minutes and have a sense when you go to your people.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah, if people want to get in touch and have interest in this, please feel free to use me as a resource, and I can patch you into Woj. I can directly relate that I got to see Woj in his prior existence, and he has cut from 3 phones down to 1, but he's still on that one quite a bit. And I can assist in getting that connection made when that connection is necessary. So please feel free to use me as a resource as well. And tomorrow with the recording, the one-sheeters that I have, I messaged Bob Barata in the midst of this to say if he has information to forward it to me, and I'll send it out with the recording tomorrow with the Victory Logistics information as well.
Yeah.
Sean,
Okay,
I just sent you an
Real
email.
quick. Yeah, I'm sorry.
No, Sean, I just sent you an email to have reach out to my my business email.
Perfect.
We can get stuff working on right away. with this.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Awesome, Vinny.
And just so everybody in here knows too, the role that coach has played in this, he and I, we, on a day they didn't have practice last week, obviously coach is in there and he's working on 100 different things and watching tape and planning, but I was able to get him off campus for a couple hours, to go to lunch with, a potential, somebody who I think in both areas, the trucking and the payment processing. And so coach is fully invested in this. And so whenever one of us needs to pull him in a direction, to be able to visit with these people and help them understand how important it is to the program, on top of everything else he's doing, he's jumping in there with us. And that listen, it's great they hear from me or they hear from one, but when they hear from coach, it's different. And so that's a big advantage we have going for us in getting out there and canvassing people for, for this kind of business.
Hey, Woj, can I touch on one thing real quick on that question from Paul?
Sure.
On the pricing. So just so, and the slide didn't come up, but Paul, I want you to know that. So our outfit, MyCamp Solutions, is the #1 outside sales organization for Fiserv, First Data. So you've heard of the Fiserv and all the Clover products. But we have over 50,000 merchants. And I say that not to brag, but as a result of that, we have so much leverage with the Fiserv that we put deals in that our wholesale pricing is the best on the street, which is why we buy a lot of smaller people in the business, because they don't have the wholesale pricing we have. So that allows us to very confidently go to somebody being like, I'm pretty certain I can save you. We can save you if we have, we'll do an analysis. So to answer that question on like rate to rate, it's really, we're very confident because of our wholesale and our position within Fiserv, if that makes sense to you. Yeah.
Perfect. Well, that'll leave some time here. If anybody has any questions for Mark, Woj, or either of the Bobs at this point, so feel free to fire at will. Wow. Really? Nothing?
Dan Collins, I think, does.
Go for it, Dan. Unmute.
You got to unmute, Dan.
I didn't have my assistant here to do that. Mark knows what I mean. This question's a little bit off strict just basketball, but I'm sure many people are aware of the just about ready to engage NCAA changes in scholarships and roster numbers. How how at the university are we going to deal with that? Will we actually revenue share with the players so that we have to live under those roster limits, or what?
Woj, I can jump in, or Sean, I can jump in.
No,
on
that's all
this.
you, Bob.
Oh,
You're
Bob,
the only
that's
one here
all
to
you.
answer that question.
I figured I'd have to beat these guys down so they wouldn't have to give this answer. You know, I raced to the line first. Hey, Dan, thanks for the question. It's complex, right? It's a complex environment right now. And the most difficult part of this is we're being forced to try to make decisions without having all the information. It's imperfect at best. I was on a call today with my peer colleagues in the A10, the ADs, and we don't have answers because we have concepts, but they're not answers, and we don't know all the details. But yeah, I mean, there's a chance, the presidents are going, and the A10 are going to vote on whether we opt into these the House settlement terms, and that's, I think, what you're referring to is, you know, the House case that's out there, and that would give us the ability to revenue share. But there's several different proposals out there that the presidents are going to consider, and one would be that we would just continue to bulk up our collective and over time get to a place where we would opt into the deal and revenue share. One is that we would revenue share right now and be able to collect and be able to count our collective disbursements as part. And I think we would like that approach because we feel like we're going to be able to hit those minimums. But it's unknown right now. The reality is that the conference is going to vote as a group, and then we'll pursue that path most likely, and we'll have to participate with all of the elements of the House settlement terms, which, as you mentioned, does include roster caps, roster limits, and for us, it will require us to manipulate some of our roster numbers with our other sports. It doesn't impact basketball in a way that will negatively impact anything with the institution, but certainly other sports, we're going to have to adjust some numbers. I'll give you an example. Like baseball, we're carrying 42. NCAA had set a roster of 40, but that you needed to be at by the spring. We're carrying 42 now, and the roster limit will be 34 next year. And what we're hearing, we don't have the exact date, but they're saying maybe by the first day of classes. So we have to adjust, and we have to plan for that right now, as if our direction to our coaches is, hey, we have to plan that we're going to opt in, that we're going to have to abide by roster caps and plan accordingly. Here is the number. Here's the number that you're limited. In some cases, we're going to have to grow some roster numbers to help us achieve that same number that we provide the institution from an enrollment standpoint. And in other cases, we're going to have to cut some numbers.
Right.
And that'll come through a variety of ways of attrition. There could be some opt-outs off the roster, and there could be some roster situations where we have to part ways with some student athletes. And these are all things that are out there in a very dynamic, a very complex, and a very complicated landscape that we're trying to navigate in a place where we don't have perfect information.
Yeah, and I asked that, you answered the bulk of it. About a half a dozen years ago, we instituted a very a policy with using athletics to help us grow revenue and enrollment. And if you start to take teams like baseball with 42 players, and now you lose 7, same thing happens with my sport, cross country, happens with tennis, happens with golf. Suddenly, it's not just athletics; it's the university in general that loses 40 or 50 students. That's a big revenue hit to the university. And, it's just from a selfish standpoint, since I do the volunteer recruiting for cross country, I look at it like limiting the recruits, which could also impact the quality of the recruit I'm looking at. And it changes the dynamic of the non-revenue sports.
It does. The good news is when we look at all the sports that we offer, the bottom line won't be a reduction for our bottom line number. It's going to be manipulating some of those roster numbers. And I'll give you a great example, Dan, to what you referred to. When I got here, I had talked to the president and some other folks, the board, and Michael Hickey and some other people about potentially growing our track and field cross country program to the extent of maybe from where we are now, which is actually 71 student athletes, and it's primarily cross country runners, as you know, to maybe 120 and 130. And we use a similar we used a similar method at West Point to grow our diversity, and we were going to use a similar method at Lemoyne to grow that roster. But suddenly now, if we're looking at, maybe only being able to add a total of 19 to get to 90, that changes that number a little bit. But when we look at all of our
Right.
numbers holistically, it isn't a bad news story that we're going to lose. We're not, but that's incumbent upon some of our other sports building up. Men's lacrosse, a great example. They carry 56 on the roster last year right now, and next year it would be 48. So if we lose 8, then we know that we got to build 8 somewhere else. And so it's kind of the push and pull, the tension. It's not ideal. We've talked to the NCAA about it. We don't understand how this isn't going to be viewed as cutting opportunities, but they say because we're offering more roster, more scholarship opportunities is actually a good thing. I think that's how they can sleep better at night. The reality is schools at the mid-major level will be costing some student athletes opportunities.
Yeah.
Who else? Come on. Nobody? I don't believe it. All right. Well, we won't belabor it. Won't keep anybody longer than they need to, so you can go tune into the game. Obviously want to thank everybody for coming on board. I'll get this dressed up, the recording tomorrow. I'll get those one-sheeters and the information to be able to forward to you, to everybody, our entire 6-man contingent. The one housekeeping note, we have a busy weekend here at Bonaventure. Tomorrow night, fellow 6-man member Dick Kearns has a presentation on campus, followed by a dinner. And then this weekend, there's the journalism and mass communications fete going on Friday through Sunday that I know Mr. LaPlaca will be joining us for. There'll be a screening of the Heart of Bonaventure basketball on Friday. And then we have our 6-man practice experience weekend as well, where a dozen of our 6-man members will be coming in to spend the weekend with us and the team, get a chance to meet the team. The one item that I would relay to individuals and remind you of is our Mohegan Sun event, is our 6-man destination event, where we have spots reserved, rooms, and obviously taking care of tickets for December 13th through the 15th. I've heard from many of you. If you do plan on coming and you have not yet notified me, please drop me a note, text me, however you want, and so I can get you taken care of and stewarded through that event. But obviously want to thank everybody for coming on tonight. We touched a lot of bases, teased you a little bit as far as what's coming this season, and kind of testing things to find out how wide we can get this radius of support for the Bonnies in all different ways. But first and foremost, we want to thank you endlessly. This wouldn't be possible without you and what you've done to this point, and record numbers and record support. And this place means a lot to all of us, and that's obvious. And it's a passion of all of ours to continue this. And
John,
I'll leave it at that. Yes,
John, this is Mark.
Yep.
I just wanted to ask you a question about your relationship with the Yes Network. How did that come about? And what games are going to be televised?
Well, I don't have that direct information. That would be Seth Johnson that had that. Bob, do you have any of the tertiary information?
Yeah. No, I'm happy to speak to it quickly. So Seth began these conversations a year ago. Concurrently, I was having very similar conversations with the same people at Yes when I was at Lemoyne. And they have some capacity to air some content. And if they feel like the content is high enough quality, they would consider putting games on. And I was working a package at Lemoyne. When I took this job, I called my guy and say, hey, I know you're talking to Seth. Forget about our conversations at Lemoyne. Let's focus on Bonaventure. And so Seth went to work and was doing that. We were able to get this package. It's a 9-game package that includes men's and women's games. They will take our ESPN Plus broadcast and basically simulcast it. So it'll be the same broadcast, same broadcasters on both the Yes Network and on ESPN Plus. But it's great visibility. As you know, Yes Network is the largest RSN in the country, the largest distribution. Obviously, the Halo brand is fantastic with the Yankees brand. And for us to be have that penetration in the New York metropolitan area, in addition to the national brand, is fantastic. It really gets us in that metropolitan area consistently. So with 9 games, 5 on the men's side, 4 on the women's game side. Let me give you the information that I have for you on the men's games anyway, that I know to be true. So Saturday, December 7th, our Buffalo game is on the Yes Network. That's a 4 p.m. tip. January 11th, that's a Saturday as well. Our LaSalle game, a 12 p.m. noon tip on Yes Network. Wednesday, the 15th of January, that is against Richmond, a 7 p.m. Yes Network game as well. And then on the 28th of January, 8 p.m. tip against Dayton, Yes Network broadcast at 8 p.m. That should be 5, if I'm not mistaken. Oh, the other one, I'm sorry, the Lemoyne game. We open up with that package against Lemoyne, and they're part of the package. 4 p.m. tip on Saturday, November 16th. We have 4 women's games on that package as well. I can give you that. Just give me 1 second to reach around on my desk. And what I have there, Saturday, January 12th, a conference game against UMass. Sunday, February 7th. Second, I should say, is a 1 p.m. against Duquesne. And then we added 2 other ones that I don't have in front of me right now. But it's a 9-game package, 5 on the men's side, 4 on the women's side. Hopefully that answers your question.
That's wonderful. Thank you. That's great news.
I'll include the schedule in the attachments tomorrow on my email that we'll have the networks that are carrying.
Sean, can I just add to that really quick?
Yep.
Sure.
So this goes to the experience at the game. Are we doing anything as a university to make sure that at those games, I'm assuming those are all home games,
Yes.
that the students are going to show up and that it's going to look good on TV, because that's an important part of all this. I mean, in terms of my experience at Bonaventure, and things have definitely changed over the past 20 years since I've been there. I think there has to be a big priority put on how we're going to look. If we're going to be exposed to more of a national audience on Yes, we should really put some thought into what we're going to present ourselves at those games, to make sure the students are really engaged, and that the Riley Center is really rocking on those games. I really think that, we got to put some thought into that.
Yeah, duly noted.
It's a great point. It's a great point. You have this national platform, and you want to make sure that you're putting your best foot forward and using it as a marketing tool. So we'll be working with our marketing group to do that. 2 of those Yes games are during Christmas break. So obviously we'll be a little more challenged to inject the energy, the same level of energy that we have when the students are here. But point well taken. And yeah, it's a national platform. And if you don't provide that level of excitement and energy, it can work as a negative, right? Instead of a positive. And these are the kinds of things I worked with at West Point as well. when we were struggling there and we had national TV, if you don't provide the atmosphere, it works as a negative, not a positive.
I grew up in Fort Montgomery, so I know it very well.
Oh, is that right? There you go.
Yeah.
Well, I moved the Corps. I was the guy that moved the Corps of Cadets to that side because we needed people on TV as the backdrop instead of empty bleachers.
So cool. Yeah.
Well, thank you, gentlemen. That should wrap it. Thank you, Woj. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Bobs, for coming on and educating our clientele. Safe travels to those that are coming to see us. Look forward to seeing many of you. And obviously over the course of the season, we'll be running into the vast majority of you, with the exception of Ollie McGonigal out there on the West Coast. Ollie, our thoughts are with you, hanging out there on the left coast, and hopefully we can get you back here sometime soon for an in-person visit. But thank you, gentlemen. Have a great night. Go Bonus.
Great. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
All right, gentlemen. Thank you.